исламское государство нацеливается на господство в исламском мире. И не только там. Только этими планами явно не ограничиваются.
The Pentagon alleges that Russia's airstrikes against ISIL are not actually hitting their stated target. Well, that's according to the US Secretary of Defense. RT's Gayane Chichikan, she looked at the accusations.
Ash Carter suggested that Russia targeted the opposition of Bashar Assad. That was not ISIL. Now, although he suggested that without confirming where and who Russia targeted, which sounds like a contradiction, here's what he said.
The reason, one of the reasons why the Russian position is contradictory is that exactly the potential for them to strike, as they may well have, in places where, in fact, ISIL is not present.
I just want to make sure I understood your answer. Are you saying then that the strikes were in a place where you believe there were no ISIL fighters, and therefore leads you to that?
Again, I want to be careful about confirming information, but it does appear that they were in areas where there probably were not ISIL forces, and that is precisely one of the problems with this whole approach.
So he has not confirmed anything. He was saying may have, as you could hear, could have, but at the same time, he put out that allegation there that Russia targeted someone that was not ISIL. Now, here's how the Russian defense official clarified the strikes.
All the strikes were conducted after aerial intelligence and clarification of data received from the Syrian army.
It seems that what we're seeing right now is the beginning of a new information battle between U.S. and Russian officials over who targeted what and where. It looks like it's going to get more complicated because, remember, there's a number of countries carrying out airstrikes in Syria, and there's not much coordination between them at this point.
Russia's foreign minister also commented on US accusations that Russia is targeting rebels in Syria.
Everything was said by the Russian Minister of Defense. Don't listen to Pentagon about the Russian strikes.
Sergei Lavrov is now meeting the US Secretary of State John Kerry in New York. It's the first talks between the top diplomats since Russian warplanes started targeting ISIL positions in Syria. Well, earlier, they discussed countering the terrorist threat in the Middle East at the UN Security Council meeting. Defeating ISIL is high on the agenda there. And once again, the US has voiced its reluctance to work with Assad. Well, we discussed this with a political and media advisor to the Syrian president, Buthaina Shaban.
As the terrorists made inroads throughout large swaths of Syria and Iraq, raping, enslaving, and murdering civilians along the way, the Syrian regime didn't try to stop them. Instead, it focused all of its military power on moderate opposition groups who were fighting for a voice in Syria.
I think there's no grain of truth of what John Kerry has said about Syria. I mean, could you imagine that the government would not target terrorists and would target moderate opposition? After all, the Pentagon announced today that they are not going to arm opposition anymore because they discovered that this opposition they have been arming is selling or giving arms to al-Nusra and probably to ISIL. You know, I really would love the West to review all their policy in Syria. The problem right from the beginning was not Assad, and the target was not Assad. just as Libya is destroyed now, and they were talking about Gaddafi, and Iraq is destroyed, and they were talking about Saddam Hussein or about mass destruction weapon. These concepts, if you want, floated in the media. They are only used in order to destroy our countries, in order to destroy our civilization, in order to destroy our people. I really believe that the West should wake up and see what's happening on the ground.
The news Russia's military will assist Syria has triggered plenty of reaction online. You can see this map right here on the screen. Social media users have become much more active. Well, social media was very quick to lash out at Russia over its just launched Syria airstrikes, claiming that they'd killed civilians. And major TV channels were also ready to run with those claims.
استهداف أحد مقرات تجمع العز.
U.S. warplanes obviously continuing to fly their missions in Syria, not taking that direction from the Russians.
What I cannot believe is how venerated news organizations, how they are abnegating and completely turning their backs on their duty and not understanding that today you don't have to infiltrate media conglomerates like Operation Mockingbird we speak of here in this country. All you have to do is set up a phony Twitter account and have one person, one line producer refer to it, and it's off. That's it. No validation, no accreditation, no authentication.
Some news channels, they have indeed been stirring up fears over Russia's action in Syria. Let's have a look, shall we, together, Lionel?
Russia has been building up its military presence there.
It'll have a couple of missile cruisers and some amphibious vessels.
They're saying no troops on the ground or being sent into combat. They have got troops on the ground there. They've got 1,700 Marines.
It's an example of Russia flexing its muscles, putting itself center stage, trying to portray itself as a global power.
If the Russians say they're attacking ISIS, ISIS doesn't have fighter jets. ISIS doesn't have an air capability. So why are the Russians moving in with all this air capability to challenge ISIS?
What impact this has on the audience, the millions of listeners, because obviously you're in the States. What has been the reaction?
I will tell you right now that there are people that I know, both in the media and observers, who are spouting and repeating like mynah birds Cold War rhetoric. Now, I don't understand something. Maybe you can help me. When coalition forces, the good guys, and that's a big term here, the good guys, when the good guys apply a coalition strike force against ISIS, we applaud that. When the bad guys identify the same target, ostensibly, then they're flexing their muscles. There's a big difference between helping out a country per invitation and invading it. Last time I checked my dictionary.